Hey, welcome to our very first Oddity Wine Club wine tasting. Um, this has gone live now, so you've picked up your wines and food, and we're going to walk you through what we have for you. And we have the guy who's responsible for this, the guy who dreamt it up, and our resident wine director, and for Nook and Oddfish, Todd Prezek. And we're just going to go through the wines, and I'm going to ask some questions, and hopefully we'll get some more insight from Todd. And there we have it. So let's have at it, Todd.
Hey, welcome. Thanks. So jump right into it. We're going to taste our first wine in the box today, which is the Castello di Roncade Manzoni Bianco from the Veneto region in northern Italy, so just north of Venice. Got the wine in my glass here. So just quickly, this wine's pretty aromatic. I get a lot of apple. There's a little bit of a leesy character, nutty character. It kind of smells like MGD. It smells like beer a little bit, or peanut shells, and I'll explain that in a second. It's quite mineral as well. A little bit of a white pepper note. The wine is dry. Again, those ripe apple, kind of pear flavors, really lovely minerality, hint of white pepper, lovely floral component to this wine. The wine is quite fresh on the palate.
And just so you know, at home, you don't have to spit.
Yeah, absolutely. You do not. We're doing this at 11 o'clock in the morning, so this is day drinking. I got to go to work after. Yeah, the alcohol's moderate, moderate plus amount of complexity, and the finish really lingers. The finish is medium plus. So this wine is from Castello di Roncade, Manzoni Bianco. It is a winery that was founded in 1508 and has been in continuous operation since then. It has been family run the whole time. The current family that owns it has owned it since the early 1900s. Fun info on Manzoni Bianco. It's a grape you may not have heard of. It was a cross created by Dr. Luigi Manzoni at Italy's oldest enology school in the 1920s. And he took Riesling and crossed it with Pinot Blanc or Pinot Bianco. Those are two French grape varieties, but because this wine was created in Italy and is almost exclusively grown there, it's considered a native Italian grape variety. So,
hey, and sorry to interrupt, but what does Pinot Blanc bring to the game that helps the Riesling, or is it vice versa? Like, are we focusing on the Riesling, we're adding Pinot Blanc to do something, or is it the other way around?
I'm not sure what his motivation was, but what I always like about this grape variety, and I've had a couple of different examples, is that you get the kind of aromatic intensity and the freshness that Riesling brings to the table. But most Rieslings can be quite linear and quite lean. The wine kind of tends to run down the middle of your palate, whereas Pinot Blanc or Pinot Bianco has a more broader texture. So instead of running just down the middle of your tongue or down the middle of the palate, there's a rounder mouthfeel to it, so it's a little bit richer, which most Rieslings don't have. So I think it's the perfect, the perfect marriage of two great grape varieties.
Yeah, and I do get some people, not as much as it used to be, but people are like, oh, I don't drink Riesling. People have had the cheap Riesling experience, and there's a whole lot more to Riesling, and plus. And this may or may not be true, because you know better than I do, but I find when you're young, you try something white and sweet, and then you get into reds, and then you go really big reds, and you're like, oh, I'm over this whole getting knocked out with just too much. And then a lot of people who really enjoy wines will go to complexities of white. Am I right with this? And Riesling can be endless.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have bad experiences with inexpensive sweet Rieslings, and a lot of Rieslings are dry. They're not all dry. There's a lot of sweet Riesling too, but yeah, Riesling can be. There's a book called "The Greatest White Grape on Earth," and it's all about Riesling. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's certainly a wonderful grape variety that can be quite complex and make everything from bone dry wines to sparkling wines to sweet dessert wines and everything in between. So it can really express itself in a lot of different ways, and it's super food friendly, and yeah, it really lends itself to expressing where it comes from. It can't really hide anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my progression in wine was similar. I started, actually skipped the sweet whites, went right to the big reds, and then kind of pulled back and started looking more for wines with subtlety and complexity, that
The-
weren't quite as easy to understand at first. But yeah.
yeah. Okay. Wine number two, my friend. What do we got?
All right, wine number two, we're going to go to France. We're going to go to Costières de Nîmes, which is in the south of France, near the Mediterranean. This is Saveur de Temps Rosé. This wine is, I think pretty typical of a rosé from the region. So, fairly decent salmon color there. Moderate plus nose. Lots of fresh red berry fruit, cranberry, strawberry, raspberry, a little bit of a rose or floral character to it, mineral, and maybe just a touch of spice as well, a little peppery note. The wine is it's quite dry but fruity. Again, you get the kind of creamy berry flavor, lots of fresh, tart, red raspberries, strawberries. You get a hint of that white pepper. Really mineral, super fresh. The alcohol is quite mild. Not a terribly complex wine, but the finish is moderate, and good. It's just delicious. It's awesome, delicious rosé that's going to work with a lot of different foods.
Yeah. And, back in the day, like 10, 12, 13 years ago, when we opened Nook, at that time, rosé wasn't taken very seriously. You might find a bottle here or there in a menu, not like the multiple bottles you'll find now, and not like the volume that's being consumed. It's a no-brainer for summer. But also throughout the year, we sell a lot of it, especially at Oddfish. But I remember when Joie came out, it was one of their first years, and their rosé was spectacular. But on the label, they put "Rethink Rosé" on it because of the fact they actually had to sell people on it. They had to sell people on the fact that this is good rosé. This is what rosé is supposed to be about. When you and there's so many rosés, great rosés to choose from now, from here, from France, from many places. Is there a different rosé that you might buy for Oddfish as opposed to Nook?
Yeah, I mean, with Nook, mostly pizza and pasta, olive oil, and the fact that we mostly only work with Italian wines, our rosé is going to be from Italy for sure. Whereas in Oddfish, we use a global menu, so we don't have one country or region that we're sourcing things from. We also tend to use a lot more butter or cream in some of the preparations. So for that reason, I tend to reach for a slightly richer rosé to work with our food. Yeah, so a lot of Southern French rosé for sure. We use local rosé in the summer as well. And we have a premium rosé. We have a rosé that's $100 on the menu at Oddfish. It's quite rich and broad and structured. It's something that could easily use a little age to soften. Most rosés, I would say 99% of rosé is meant to be consumed within the first year or two, like fresh, young,
Yeah.
one. But yeah, there's a lot of very serious rosé, and we sell quite a bit of it. People love it. They like that premium, richer, broader style that works well with everything from seafood to even like roast chicken or roast pork or even richer dishes.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Wine number 3.
I'm just
What
going
do
to
we
add
got?
a little bit of
Oh,
history
sorry.
about the winery. So Savour de Temple was established in 1929. So we're getting up on 100 years. It's been around for a while. They're a large winemaker from the Rhone Mediterranean area. All their vineyards are organically or at least sustainably farmed, so quite responsible. And it's a cooperative. It's a union of a bunch of small growers that have pooled their resources and their fruit to make wine on a larger scale. And the wines are always affordable and delicious. And yeah, so just wanted to add a little history about that wine. Wine number 3 that we're going to move into is from South Africa, from a winery called Nat Valley, and this is Cinsault. So Cinsault is not a very dark colored variety, and on the nose, fairly aromatic. I would call that medium plus intensity. So there's lots of red and dark fruit. Red cherry, dark cherry, but there's a much more savory edge to this wine.
When you say savory edge, because I get a little bit of that muskiness. Is that where you're going, or am
yeah,
I
I mean,
wrong?
there's a little bit of like a little bit of must, kind of like this could be from the old world, but I get like a little bit of a peppery note on this. I also get like herbs, like almost like sage that's been like dried sage. Yeah, so definitely like just like a herbaceous, savory character to complement the bright fruit character that comes off of this wine. It's also quite earthy, so a little bit of like almost potting soil or freshly turned earth.
Yeah.
Again, there's a floral character here, but the flowers are a little bit dried out. They're not fresh. It's more like potpourri a little bit. The palate. Yeah, the palate mimics the nose almost identically. Red and dark fruit. It's tart, a little bit fresh, and a little bit dried out as well. Again, a little bit of that peppery, kind of herbaceous, savory character, a little bit earthy, a little bit of that kind of dried flower character. The wine is quite fresh. It's very tart, kind of runs down the middle of the palate. Yeah, there's a good amount of complexity. The alcohol is very mild on this wine. It's only 12.5% alcohol, so it's very drinkable. This time of year, I would drink it around room temperature, just slightly cooler than that. But in the summer, I might put this on ice for 15 minutes and serve it with a chill. I wouldn't drink it as cold as like white wine or rosé, but there would definitely be like a chill to it to maybe enhance the more refreshing characters of this wine. Nat Valley Cinsault's got a really cool story. Winery's been around, like the property has been around since the 1700s. It hasn't made wine continuously since then, but started in the 1700s. The owner, Alex Milner, specializes in Cinsault. Cinsault used to be the most planted grape variety in South Africa. Now it's less than 2% of all the bottlings that are available, all the vineyards that are available. So the remaining Cinsault is usually old vine planted on very good sites. So you don't get a ton of fruit, but the fruit that comes off is very concentrated and very complex, really good stuff. The way that Alex Milner got into Cinsault was when he was when he was in school, he was in enology school. One of his professors told the class that Cinsault was not worth learning about. It was a minor blending grape variety. It was unimportant, and it was not to be fussed over. And it got Alex thinking, well, what if this was treated like a rock star? What if it was given the best sites? And what if it was treated with care in the winery? And so he's made a career around it. His small winery that only puts out 1,500 cases a year focuses exclusively on Cinsault. He does 4 or 5 different single vineyard bottlings, and then the Cinsault that we're drinking today is a blend of all 5 of those old vine wineries. Alex is an avid cyclist, and he cycles around South Africa. And if he sees an old vineyard planted with Cinsault, he drops a pin. He'll go back later, talk to the owners, and that's how he's been able to get access to some of this old vine Cinsault. So kind of a cool story.
Hey, and when you mention that, historically, Cinsault was everywhere in South Africa, and then now it's only 2%. Is there a reason why they ripped it out? Is it because the fact that it wasn't growing very well, or you aren't getting the yields, or they had to make sexier stuff that would sell?
Well, it was used a lot for blending and brandy production. And I know that they still make brandy in South Africa, but I mean, palates have changed, and most people now are drinking, dry table wines. They're selling more wine than you are spirits. So
Mhm.
that probably has something to do with it. Also, a lot of people haven't heard of Cinsault, but they've heard of Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir,
Mhm.
et cetera,
Yeah.
Chardonnay. So, out with the old, in with the new. But I'm glad that they've been able to save some of these old Cinsault vines, because this wine's delicious. We've had it on the list for over 2 years at Oddfish, and it's great, incredibly versatile with food. Also, Christmas is coming up, so if you can hang on to it that long, this with some turkey or leftover turkey the next day on a BLT with or a club sandwich with a little cranberry mayo or something, I think it'd be a great pairing.
That's how we're going to market this. We're serving wines for your BLT. It's a very approachable wine club. And is that it for Cinsault? Or do you want to move on, or
Yeah, yeah.
what do you
Let's
got?
talk about Saint Innocent Pinot Noir. So, something a little close to home. Saint Innocent's in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. Um, this is a single vineyard bottling from Shea Vineyard, which a lot of people would consider to be the best, or one of the best single vineyards in Oregon. So, Pinot is pale, but this wine's got a fairly deep color to it. This wine really jumps out of the glass. Pronounced intensity, bold, dark berry fruit, lots of black cherry, plum, black raspberry. There's lots of sweet spice. I get a little bit of vanilla and cinnamon, which comes from the oak aging. This wine has seen a little bit of new oak. There's an earthy component, again, like a soil or like dried leaves, dried flowers, incense. There's a little bit of a herbaceous character as well. It almost smells like thyme. It's a lot coming off the nose, and then on the palate, yeah, this is a very rich, bold Pinot Noir. Again, the fruit character is ripe, fresh, and maybe even a little bit baked. Dark cherry, dark plum, red raspberry. The earthy component is a little bit more pronounced on the nose. You're still getting some of that sweet baking spice from the oak, a little bit of vanilla, clove. Earthy, kind of tastes like a little bit irony, herbaceous. So there's a lot going on in this wine. This wine is like very complex. The texture is a lot more round, broad, almost creamy in the mouth. This doesn't have alcohol on the label. I couldn't find it. Oh, it says 13.5, but the alcohol feels more like it might be 14 or even a little bit higher. That being said, the wine's in balance. It's still super fresh. The tannins are very soft and supple. Yeah, the finish goes on and on and on. It's a really complex wine. It's really fun to drink. So,
Hey, Todd, before you get into talk about the winery, because I know you have a great relationship with this winery, you guys that are fantastic at tasting wines and genuinely know your stuff. If you're at a tasting and you guys are having some fun, and there's a Burgundy in there, there's one from Oregon. Let's say there's one from California. I'm not sure if that's enough of a difference, but I bet there is for people like you who know. What's the thing that's going to jump out at you, especially, a great Oregon Pinot Noir, as opposed to a Burgundy,
I think
what is straight away you're going to go, oh, that's definitely Oregon.
okay, so start with Burgundy. Burgundy is definitely going to be on the earthier, more savory, less fruit driven train. So I'm going to look for like earth, spice, lower alcohol, maybe a little bit lower in body. for California, at the other end of the spectrum, I'm going to look for wines that are richer, more fruit driven, broader in the mouth. And then for me, Oregon is like a nice halfway point in between, right? You get the fruit, you get the aromatics, you get the kind of richer texture, but there's still like an earthiness and a savoriness that can make Pinot so attractive and so sexy. So for me, it's a, you know, the perfect balance of fruit, spice, earth, all those things. And, you know, on that note, in Burgundy, there's literally nowhere left to plant Pinot Noir or Chardonnay. I mean, everywhere that can be planted and make quality wine has been planted. And so you see a lot of winemakers from Burgundy who can't get access to any more fruit coming to Oregon and starting projects there. There's at least half a dozen that I can name: Mio Camazé, Louis Jadot, Comte Lafon. I could go on and on and on, but all these great wineries for Burgundy are opening up shop in Oregon because they make excellent world-class Pinot Noir. And to get a wine of this complexity from Burgundy is going to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars, as opposed to, you know, I think this wine at retail would be about $100. So certainly not an inexpensive wine, but if you're a wine lover and you love wines of complexity, the wines of Oregon price to quality ratio for the amount of quality you get is still pretty bang on. So
it's interesting you say that, because, you know, Oregon has, you know, it's not shy about pricing, you know, so you're saying that quality, dollar value, Oregon's
absolutely.
fantastic stuff.
Wines of Oregon. I mean, I've gone to, before COVID, Anna and I went to Oregon on vacation every summer for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
I love the wines. I love the people. If you've never had a chance to visit Oregon, wine country is beautiful. The people are super friendly. The wines are amazing. Yeah, it's just such an awesome place to visit and taste new wines. So I'm pretty well versed in the wines from the region. Always finding something new. Always wines of really high quality. It's a great region. One of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, and you know this guy really well, the winemaker.
Yeah, so Mark Vlasic, the owner winemaker, started this winery in 1988, I think. His specialty is wines from single vineyards. So he does Shea Vineyard, Temperance Hill, Montazi, did Zenith for a while, and Freedom Hill, I think, is the other one. He's a man that loves food and wine, so he's always thinking about food when he's crafting his wine. So even you know, a ripe vineyard like Shea always has balance. Other winemakers that want to emphasize, you know, like the more fruit driven, like the richness of Pinot Noir, the wines can be a lot bigger than Mark's, but Mark's wines, even hot vintages from ripe sites, always have balance and are meant to go with food. Yeah, he's really interesting. You go listen to him talk, a lot of F-bombs, zero filter. Super fun to talk to. Makes great wines. I mean, he's still very small. He makes 6,000 cases of wine a year, which sounds like a lot, but in terms of a global winery, it's not that much. He doesn't make very much wine. And I understand they've just opened a new tasting room a few years ago, which I haven't had a chance to visit yet, but apparently his new tasting room and winery is an awesome visit. So if you ever get a chance, if you're down there, go visit.
You mentioned to me a while ago that this is a especially good vintage. Do you get wrapped up in vintages? I know we don't put the vintages on in our wine list this moment. A lot to do with space, that we just don't have the space to actually get things on our wine list. But is this vintage anything in particular?
I mean, have you seen a string of like warm, consistent vintages in Oregon? And 16 was highly rated. All the wines I've tasted from 16 are supple and have the beautiful fruit component without losing freshness or ageability. I like this because this wine's already got 5 years of bottle age, right? Wines, you know, the current release for Oregon is 2019, and soon we'll be getting into 2020, whereas this wine has had a little time to integrate, to coming together to just be like a complete wine. This is a wine that could certainly age for 15, 20 years, but I think it's in a really beautiful spot right now. And if you like your wines more fruit driven, as opposed to like the kind of savory, you know, secondary and third characters that could take on when you age, I think this wine is in a perfect spot right now.
Right on.
And one more thing on vintage too. I personally am a producer. I'm more concerned about producer than I'm about vintage, because the producers that I enjoy make good wines every year, regardless of vintage. Yeah, there'll be some variation, and yes, there'll be some changes, but I'm a big believer in producer over vintage.
Mhm.
My 2 cents.
Because they have the skill set to save a mediocre vintage.
I wouldn't say save, but they make good wine every year, even in challenging conditions.
Mhm.
Right. So even if it was challenging, I was just in Italy, and I went to Montalcino for a week, and 14 was a very difficult vintage. But a lot of the 14s that I tried from the producers that I really love and respect, yeah, I mean, they weren't as great as the 15s or 16s, which maybe had a little bit more weight, complexity, all this stuff. But in those more challenging vintages, they're not making their top wines. So their best fruit, which would usually go into Reserva or the single vineyard bottlings, they don't feel that the wines are worthy to showcase their vineyard or to become a Reserva. So those wines get reclassified into their like regular Brunello bottlings, which become that much better. And they might not be, 20-year age worthy, but they're great for restaurants because they're a little bit more approachable right out of the gate. And, the wines are still complex and really delicious, even if it was a challenging vintage. So,
Yeah. So, this is part of what we do. Obviously, the wines, we have food as part of the wine club, and I don't know how people are going to approach this. If they're going to have people over and try all the wines and knock them off in a night, is it just going to be two people and have one wine now and then another wine later? And but on tap this week is that we have two meals for vegetarians. As of now, things are always subject to change since it's 48 hours from the release. We're taping this on a Tuesday, but the vegetarian option is eggplant parmesan, and then the non-vegetarian option is that they've made a pork ragu that'll go with our pasta, and we also have the sourdough bread from Fife and burrata. Now, if you were going to say, okay, well, I'm going to have this particular wine with my pork ragu, or I'm getting the eggplant parmesan, which one would you think is maybe the best? Like, there's no perfect answer in when I get asked the question, and I might answer it differently from you when people ask, which wine should I have? I'm eating this. I'm like, and probably because of the fact I don't know wines well enough that I can't give the perfect answer or even a half-assed good answer. But I always say, what do you like? Like, I mean, what you like is probably going to go well. Don't force yourself to have something that's like just not in your wheelhouse. So in any event, that's just me being me and not very educational. But what would you choose with eggplant parmesan out of this list that we have?
oh, with the eggplant parmesan, I'm probably going with the Manzoni Bianco. It's fresh, but broad and textural. So I think you can, I didn't talk about it, but there is a slight bitterness in this wine as well, which I think might work off bitterness that's, found in eggplant. And by doing that, I think when you try this wine with that dish, I think you're going to find that the Manzoni Bianco is going to become a little bit more fruit driven. And I think that could be a fun pairing. With the pork ragu, I mean, I'm definitely going with the Shea Vineyard, this rich, powerful Pinot Noir. Pork and Pinot, especially a richer, more broad style Pinot like this, I think is going to be just fantastic. And for the burrata, I mean, I think either the Rosé or the Manzoni Bianco. I mean, Rosé is just such a versatile pairing, and this one's kind of light and fresh, so it's tart and it's going to kind of cut through the creaminess of the burrata. So I think the Rosé and the burratas how I would go.
Great. And part of the package deal too is that Todd contributed and I got to work and we made a music playlist, and it's about 90 minutes. And I asked Todd for the wines beforehand. I'm like, oh, could I possibly make a connection? No, I just made a playlist that both Todd and I like, and I think it'll work well for people coming over or just like hanging out, or it's just kind of a good. There's some interesting stuff on there for sure, but for the most part, it's just stuff that I think Todd and I like listening to.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There were some really great songs that I'd never heard on there before, and honestly, Brad gave me the playlist on Sunday, we'll call it our mixtape because it's 90 minutes. And yeah, I mean, it was great to just have on the background. Ann and I had a friend over for dinner. We had a couple of bottles of wine open and it was on in the background. And yeah, it was awesome music for a great social night. And there's a really awesome Whitesnake cover on there that I hope you like, because that was my favorite discovery. So
I know it's funny when I make a mixtape, and you were good because what was it, Sunday night, right? And I'm like, oh, I wonder if he likes it, and then immediately like you're like, ooh, Whitesnake cover, I love it. Well,
honestly,
I
I've
think
listened to that playlist 3 times, so I hope you guys like it because it was super fun.
right on. Well, hey, thanks for your time, Todd. You're you're a gem. You're a gem, and your knowledge is amazing. And like I said, this has been something you approach us about, and I, I like this, and I just like having fun with stuff. So this is fun to just give people another little view into what we can offer. And the past room is part of it. The wines that these wines for the most part are pretty much stuff that we get, and you've sourced out and you've worked hard to find these wines. So I love it. And so it's something we're going to do every month. And for the most part, everything will be released on the third weekend of every month, and we might tweak the days when you can pick it up. But yeah, so it pretty much sold out to what we wanted to for this first month, and we're really happy about that because it's just a fun little thing that we're going to do. But you can order anytime, and you can order ahead of time because holiday season's coming up. So I reckon we'll double what we did this past month and get your orders in and not be disappointed. Wow, that's a sale. That's like a used car salesman. Get it now. Do not be disappointed. But in any event, I love it. I had a lot of fun with this, and I hope you enjoy it. I enjoy the food, and yeah, we'll see you. Well, Todd and I will be back here on video next month doing the same thing, but we'll see you in the restaurants beforehand, and I'm sure, or at the pastor room. And yeah, take care. And Todd?
Yeah, thanks for the support. This is super fun, and hope you guys enjoyed it. And wines for next month are already picked, and the food looks awesome. I'm probably going to buy a case next month because I know what the food is already, and looking forward to doing this again. So see you in the restaurants.
All right, see you later.
Ciao.